We're going to start now. Somebody's fetching Mrs. Firmstone. She has agreed to come. So we're going to start. She can't stay longer than an hour, the nurse told us. So we're going to try and do a lot within an hour. So I think to save some time, we'll start with the preliminaries at the moment. And then when she comes, we will halt, and then we will carry on with the program. Our program director is Dr. Fenner.
I'm not sure if
I hand over to her.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. As was said, I am Dorothy Was Middleton, now Fenner, and I'm so proud to just take you through the afternoon. I don't want any titles of program director or anything. That seems so much at work. We are here on a Saturday afternoon to honor the lady that will be arriving shortly. Okay, so I'll just take you through the afternoon. We want to start the afternoon as is appropriate, I think, for every one of us in a word of prayer. But I just spoke to Merlin now, who's going to open in prayer. But I just find that it's necessary for Mrs. Firmstone to be here when we open in prayer. So just to get the ball rolling, there are some of us who are frowning and some of us who are very embarrassed. I'm just going to pick random people, or I'm going to ask you to be brave enough. Just stand up and introduce yourself. I've introduced myself. Let's go back on our maiden surnames. As people knew us, they knew me as, what was that name? And Mrs. Firmstone is the one who warned me while I was in school to get rid of that name. She said, Dorothy, that name is going to stick with you. And here, she's lived to see it. It's on me now. So Dufa's in the house. Right, anyone else? You know, that's Avril Cock, eh? Okay, that's Avril Cock. We'll get there just now. I'd like to introduce her. We're not really on good terms now. We are just pretending in front of all of you. Okay, Bernard will be with me today. Right, anyone just want to get up and remind us who you are? Or I'm going to do the teacher thing and point you out? This gentleman is waiting, man.
I just got here.
No, that's all the reason why you started up. Come on, be a little flower and stand up. Here we are.
I'm Mohammed once. When we got to boarding school in 19th. No.
Can we all hear? Mario,
1979. Me and Braden were Mrs. Thompson's favorites.
So that makes you about 70 years now. I wasn't good at maths, eh?
We were the only ones that were allowed to go into the house to go and roll puzzles. I promise you. And we were the first ones that completed the big circular puzzle. for Mrs. Thompson.
You're lucky you're not at school in today's day and age because there's no pets at school. You're lucky you came from that era where there were still pets allowed. Carry on. Sorry, did I take the one out of you? Yeah. Okay, welcome. Thanks, lady. Thank you so much. I'll see you.
Okay. I'm not from the school. My only connection to the school is I'm married to Neville Veta, who's Betty Fern's
Neville, hi, Jean's brother.
Yes.
Hi. Hey, I'm the only one with the good memories. I'm the only one that keeps a young face. Good memories. Welcome, man. I saw the two-clean face. Right, carry on.
Yeah, and you know what's it like when you sit and have dinner with Auntie Betty, and of course you listen to each one. You know, this happened, that happened. This is what we're going to do, and this is my connection. I was originally from Pietermaritzburg. Serena Oliver, my parents.
From Gertrude Street? There we are.
Yeah, and then we moved to Durban, and this is how I am connected.
Do you remember me from town? I was that young, pretty little girl. Never mind.
I'm sorry if I don't.
No, it's fine. Anyway, thank you so much for that. Thanks. Jean just called me from Cape Town and wished us a good launch. Right. Come, anyone
Let me add
else?
one more thing. You see my window. I kept LFS in the family. My wife is also ex-LFS, Candace Key, and my father-in-law is also ex-LFS, Mother Taylor.
Oh, murdered you?
Father-in-law.
Why is he looking younger than you? Something's just slipped out. Thank you so much for that. Come, let's have somebody from this side. Let's have some. Thank you. Right, we'll have the gentleman and then we'll have the
Peter Napier.
Sorry?
From Peter Napier.
Peter Napier.
Now from Coxer, but originally from Swartland around the Little Flower.
In which year?
I'm going to let which year from 1950 to 1955.
Sure.
I'll let you do a little secret. My nickname at Little Flower was Stone Ager because I was this high and as tough as nails. This is my wife, Gloria Napier. Now Gloria Napier, she was a walker, but she hates walking. And I'm the eldest of the Napier brothers. We leave the others to talk.
Good. Welcome and thank you so much. Gentlemen there.
Afternoon,
You know, so it's
Excellencies.
the bad thing is that we don't remember each other, but Mrs. Firmston will walk in here and name everybody.
Some of you may remember me by my nickname, Voxy. I'll let you into a secret. I was Mrs. Firmston's page boy.
Wow.
And we've been friends since, all from then on.
And you are Mr.
Winston Napier.
Mr. Napier as well.
My
Not
dad,
Winston, not Mr. Winston.
my dad and Mr. Firmston were both from Ingoko and very big friends.
Oh, excellent. Welcome and thank you so much. Is there any, let's give a lady a chance now. What is the younger lady? You know, when you talk about younger ones, everyone's looking around for a 20-year-old. You're not going to find that here. When you talk about the young ones are 60, the middle-aged ones are 70, and the older ones are 80. Okay, so, Shaman?
I recognize a few faces, but I don't want to be wrong, but I'm Charmaine Redmond. Yes.
The Redmond Butchery, yeah.
My elder sister was June Redmond.
Right.
Yes, Trevor. And this is my son, Greg.
Okay. Ladies and gents, we'll just stop that for a while. I'm going to hand over to Winston now because I think Mrs. Firmstone, when she was still very, very well, when she was still very well, I don't mean physically, but when her memory was still 101%, she knew all about the book and the review. Probably some of you are not aware of it. So I'm going to give Winston 4.5 minutes. Could somebody be the timekeeper here? Just to give us a review of this book. How did this book come about? Why are we sitting here today launching this book? Over to Winston.
Thank you, Dorothy. Welcome to you all. Please let me remind Dorothy she's my younger sister. So there's no limitations today. Even if we finish 7 o'clock, that's fine. Some people haven't seen one another for a long time. I think the idea is to take you on a journey on writing this book. I scripted it because if I talk without the pages, I'm going to carry on and on and on. So I've scripted it and I'm going to try and keep to my script as close as possible to keep within the 4.5 times 3 minutes. In about 2008, after much coaxing by pupils, Mrs. Firmstone and Bernard Matthew decided to collate a book about LFS. After several years of going back and forth, trying to conceptualize how this book should look, they then came up with a model. Challenge 1. Bernard was of the opinion, and Bernard Matthew is sitting over there with the camera. Bernard was of the opinion that more of Mrs. Firmstone's story should come through the book. And he had a strong view about it. Mrs. Firmstone was of the opinion that the book has to be about, quote unquote, the boys and the girls and not about her. Bernard's thought was, Mrs. Firmstone had so many stories to tell. She's got so much in her mind. Let her write about those stories. However, he, at the point, and this is after a few years, 2.5 years or so, relies to say, I can't go anymore with pushing it in that direction. Let's take the cue from Mrs. Firmstone. As you will see in the book, that her story covers about 1/5 of the book only, and 4/5 about the boys and girls. But however, the two minds met. Although Mrs. Firmstone's story is about 1/5, the other 4/5 bypass pupils talks about Mrs. Firmstone as well. So I think Bernard has rested his case. He's happy that it turned out to be like that. Mrs. Firmstone then started approaching past pupils, inviting them to write their stories. And she did it in various ways. She phoned people in Australia, she phoned people in Canada, the US, South Africa, and the story started spreading. Okay, so the lady has arrived. So I'm going to pause because I'm the youngest of everybody.
Let's just decide quickly. Sorry, we're still talking. Let's just decide quickly how we're going to welcome her. Let's just all stand up. Yeah. I think that's the best way. Welcome, Mrs. Firmstone. Let's all echo those words. Right, we made you listen.
May I answer that welcome and tell you welcome from the deepest part of my heart inside here. Welcome to all of you, lovely people. You do not know how much I wished to come to this and how much I was frightened to come in case I collapsed. So you will please have pity on me, but I have this gentleman next to me. I hope he's going to take good care of me. Thank you.
We'll just take Mrs. First and carry on around. Yeah. You can carry on Mrs. First and be listening.
And now, my dear friends, if none of you has looked up the word friend in a book dictionary before, look it up now. Because friend is what has brought us all together here. It was impossible to come to this function if you are not a friend. I was stupid enough to, can you hear what I'm saying? Yes. I was stupid enough to actually collapse on my way to writing this address. I have to call this.
Just one.
You cannot hear. It was impossible to hear or to get control of my own faculties when I realized that I had completely lost control of myself. I got sick, and I had looked forward to this great venture, not for South Africa, not at all for Woodlands or for Ikopo or for Little Flower School, but for South Africa, that a colored woman ventured out on her own with several school children to write something of the book of Little Flower School. Why Little Flower? I hope you can hear what I'm saying. Yes. Why Little Flower School? In the early days, you have no idea. That means about 90 years ago. There was just no ability, no faculty, no chance for colored boys and girls to go to school. And that's when Little Flower School started off. They went, how many? 8, you can read it in the book. 8 little children went to school to join hands with the nuns, with the precious blood nuns, and bring them all to school. It was a timeless venture, but of course, among us were many ragamuffins. We were not all angels. We took on all kinds of mischief. Can you hear me? Yes. So that our school took in all types. It opened as a school for colored children. Very soon there were all colors in. There were white, Indian, African, and colored children. And we all got on famously together. Nobody thought of anything different. Now to all of you here, my warmest greetings. My warmest greetings. It is not anything. Thank you, thank you. To all the people here who have come here to join on the launch of this book. It isn't going to join famous launches like the launches of the ships of Helen of Troy. It is something very simple, and at the root of it all is a very, very deep love, because it was only love that could have caused a man and his wife to have given up their free life on the farm and worked for their education. My book on the history of Little Flower School is very disjointed. It's going to say parts of it, and parts of it I've often spoken to some of you about it. Little Flower School, in many ways, in many ways, it was a husband and a wife who sold their lives, their free lives as married people to work among children. What a different life that was. Here's one of the boys, another one is a cardinal, another one is this. Never mind what they are. Most of them are good husbands and good wives. Many of them hold down good jobs wherever they are. They hold down good jobs, and that is the great success of Little Flower School. The children became educated. As you will see, they started out small. I've got very often, very often, one comes along whom I taught at 8 years, 6 years, like Daphne Heslop. She's there with me now. I taught her first when her feet could not reach the floor. She was a little girl. She had a fringe, and Sister Nuncia came to me and said, "Oh, please look after that little girl. She's so small. She's so tiny." She's still small today, and now she has come back at the age of 83 and reminded me of many things that happened during her stay in Ikopo. It seems I can't see it.
Okay. It seems that the truth is that I married a man and a school. And the same can be said for my dear husband, Arthur Firmstone. He married me and Little Flower School, for better or for worse.
Yeah. And no matter how often we were reminded about this by all our friends. Where are you going to? To stay with the nuns. You're going to have a bad life. We still stayed there, and the hostel grew and grew and grew. And today we meet lovely boys and girls, all products of the Little Flower School, who have grown up. I think I saw him as I came in here. Is there a tall man, Ray Napier? Are you here? Yes. Oh. When I came in, I thought I saw him, but my eyes are not too good anymore. Anyway, these boys came. The first one was Peter. The next one was Peter. Stand up, Peter. The next one was Ray. All right. Then came Winston.
Wilfred.
Oh, Wilfred. The cardinal. Winston. Look there, Winston. And Anthony.
That was your page boy, Mrs. Wilson.
Mine?
Your page boy at your wedding.
Yes, page boy. Somebody asked, look at this boy grabbing a flower at a wedding. What was he doing? So I said, he was the page boy. Is that Anthony?
Winston.
No, Winston. Yeah, that's one. Winston and Green Thompson.
George Green Thompson.
George Green Thompson. Thank you for being so good to wear a nice white dress.
However, the real achievement is the impact the school had on providing quality education for the boys and girls in a time when they had little access to such opportunities. Much credit must go to Sister Nuncia, who spent 40 years as a remarkable principal, as well as to my accommodating and helpful colleagues. In my book, I've mentioned how much they helped me when I changed status from a 14-year-old learner to a totally inexperienced, untrained teacher.
Now I'll just explain this. During the war, in 1945, the Second World War, the male teachers were all taken away from the schools as teachers, or most of them were taken away and sent to the army. And there were no teachers. Then an inspector, Mr. C.M. Boyson, came when Sister Nuncia said she has to close the school because there are no teachers. And he went around, took the books of Standard 7, page 2, he said, this girl doesn't need any more. So Sister Nuncia said, why? She's a very good student. So he said, no, she can learn privately. She must leave school. I was 13, 14 years. So he went to the office with a pack of exercise books and caused me to be removed from school and sent to the classroom for me. I came to the office. I was barefoot and my hair was badly combed. And Sister Lucia and the inspector said, Miss Dupree, we have decided that you will leave school for a while, and help us to teach the children. We cannot send these children home. It's criminal to do so. So when he had gone to fetch a book, Sister Lucia said, Betty, you are so untidy. Your hair is not properly combed and you've got no shoes on. And I just listened to Sister Lucia and I thought to myself, she doesn't know how nice it is to be barefoot. Anyway, that was the last time I saw a classroom as a student. Thereafter, I was a teacher. From the age of 14, I think I wrote it then. Yeah. From the age of 14, I had to help. Well, there was really no teacher. Lady teachers were very, very few, and there were no male teachers. Life was really hard, and the children had to learn a good deal on their own. They had to do a good deal of the work on their own.
Okay. So many outstanding achievers have been the offspring of Little Flower School. They are situated all over the world, with very many in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and even in America. Their number includes professionals, doctors, lawyers, psychologists, engineers, and many other illustrious careers, and even a Cardinal, Wilfred Napier, not forgetting the many, many teachers.
Let's give the teachers a good
Not only did the pupils work hard academically, but also physically in the actual building and extension of the school.
Excuse me, I must here, in case I've forgotten it here, stress that the swimming pool, the tennis courts, and many other places were really constructed with the labor of the boys and the girls. In addition to this, the children had the most remarkable ways of cleaning. For instance, there was no vacuum cleaner at the school. So they put an old blanket on the floor and put a heavy girl on the blanket and pulled her around. Now, they did not tell anyone, any sister this. When Sister Lucia came into the main office, oh God, how beautifully the floor is shining today. And it was no work of any great machine. It was the work of a big girl sitting
Right, let's continue. Peter Dupree made the dangerous slopes safe for the children by leveling terraces and building retaining walls with slab stones. One of the many ways the boys assisted was by loading building sand from the rivers onto the lorry. Not to be outdone in the absence of a polisher, The girls were pulled around on blankets over the floors. I don't think Sister Lucia even knew how it was achieved. I have been privileged to be part of such an edifying institution for 51 years, and it continues to educate even succeeding generations into this new South Africa. I hope and pray that readers of my book may have happy hours, either basking in memories or enjoying the rich history of a very special school. Once again, many thanks to all of you.
Excuse me, one of the very smart boys said, Mrs. Ferguson, I hope you remember that you told us once that at a meeting a young man stood up and said, may I please give the gist of a good speech? And the man said, yes, yes. So he said, stand up, open your mouth, shut your mouth, sit down. Well, you can, after that, I never ever said many long words. It was always a short speech. Yes. Now, if there's anybody who is very eager to say something, I am eager to give you more. Yeah, yeah.
Right, at this time we're just going to shove the, mix the program up a bit, and we're going to ask Merlin to do how we were supposed to, start in prayer. So I'm going to ask Merlin to take his rightful place with Mrs. Firmstone, and we're gonna open-ish. We're not saying open this launch, but we are going to pray now.
I asked Mrs. Firmstone the other day, and we were chatting, and she knew who she was talking to, but she never mentioned my name. The whole time she knew, and she always mentions my name. Says, Miss Firmstone, you were the one that asked us questions as a teacher. I'm going to ask you now before I leave. What is my name? She looked at me, She knew who she was talking to, but she just didn't remember the name. And she called me Donovan first, which is my brother.
Yeah.
Yes?
Thank you.
But it's wonderful to see her here today. She hasn't been 100%. I see Mrs. Firmstone often enough. But like we said, we should have started in prayer. So I'm just going to ask a blessing on this occasion. Let us bow our heads. O Lord our God, we give you thanks and praise for all your blessings. First and foremost, that you have made us in your image and likeness. Lord, in all your blessings, we know that you are the great teacher. And amongst us, as you bestow us with different gifts, we thank you so much for your blessing on one of your own, Mrs. Firmstone, who is a teacher like you. We thank you for all that she has meant to the lives of those that are here today, and to those that we give thought of that are not here, many of them, that she has had an impact on their lives. O Lord our God, life is not very easy. We know that we go from young to old, and you bestow us with that gift of life. And we ask that, as Mrs. Firmstone is also aging, that all your blessings and all your healings that you can bestow on her in the times of ailing and ailments and pain, if she has any, that you put your healing hand on her. Lord, when we come to this occasion, we give thanks for this opportunity. We give thanks for the sharing that will take place here today, for those that will meet others after so many years and share on the lives that we've had. Lord, we thank that your blessings will allow this to be a very cheerful occasion. The smiles, laughter, and everything else that makes it good. And everything you make is good. Lord, we give thanks to you in saying this, and we'd like to say our prayer to you. Your name's sake. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much, brother. There's something that has just been thrown into the program that hasn't been on the program. And because we've mixed the program up, we're just going to keep it mixed up and informal. The librarian of this very library, who was instrumental together with Avril in getting this venue for us, has just told me now that they've got something special for Mrs. Firmstone. We all know that she celebrated something recently. Yeah. Right. So she's got something special, and we're going to do all the formalities or anything that surrounds Mrs. Firmstone first. Thereafter, I think we give Winston after the other one, because you all heard that Mrs. Firmstone has to be back at the home early. So she has to be back when she wants to go back. So we give Winston the floor now. Sorry, mate. No, that was just a that was just a personal thing, so don't worry. No. Oh, it's fine. Okay, right. I'm going to hand over to the librarian of the Woodlands Library.
On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
No.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. Wilson. Happy birthday to you.
Big hooray! Big hooray! Nog 'n big hooray! Now Mrs. Firmstone has to blow the candles out in one breath.
I blew them out.
On behalf of the Woodlands Library, we are so inspired with Mrs. Firmstone this afternoon. We are truly humbled to have listened to her, sharing her knowledge so widely with us. And, you know, age is just a number. She's inspired me personally, and I've forever wanted to become a writer. I've been working far too long reading books and sharing my expertise in the library field. So I feel that becoming a writer would be going the right direction. She's inspired me. Thank you for all your efforts. You're truly a role model. This is a little token from Woodlands Library. It's a healthy option. It's very heavy, so we'll help you to carry it out. And we hope that you will come and visit us at another point as well. Thank you.
Bernard? I can continue now. Remember I said Bernard and Mrs. Firmstone were contesting about the model of the book, and Bernard ceded and said, okay, we're going to proceed like this. Over the next 2 years, written stories were received via email and via the post, typed up, and some were handwritten. I would understand that those who wrote it by hand, technology had run ahead of them. They didn't know where the on button is of the computer. Several persons volunteered to type up the stories. Not only was Mrs. Firmstone and Bernard stunned by the number of responses, but by the details and enthusiasm of the reflections, including the sport, the bread pudding, the camaraderie, and even the naughty things that the boys and girls do. You remember the orchard? Stop there. You remember the cold showers, the sampan beans, and even the tendencies of some teachers and sisters were also identified. The decision on what to include and exclude in the book rested on the narrow shoulders of the authors. So some of the pupils might say, but wasn't my original story. There's some things taken out. We've used our prerogative to not include parts of some of the stories. To ensure that copies were made of every submission that came to Mrs. Firmstone, she religiously undertook to make copies at the nearest bookshop, which was about 2.5 kilometers from the home. So she put this under her arm and walked to the bookshop at the mall and made copies of all these submissions. On one of the excursions, a kind gentleman came to visit her, and Mrs. Firmstone said she was on her way to the bookshop, and he offered to drive her there. Mrs. Firmstone went to the bookshop and made her weekly quota of these copies. Bernard then returned to his car to leave the copies, and then the two of them went shopping in the mall. When they were completed, on their return to the car park, Bernard discovered that his car was stolen. With those copies and with his laptop that he had started editing the articles, everything was gone. All attempts to recover those valuable documents yielded few responses. I even put it on the Facebook group that some of the stories were stolen and others were lost through the stolen laptop. If you've submitted a story, please resubmit. However, the decision between Bernard and Miss Firmstone was taken to proceed, even though it was with a heavy heart. So we wish to say publicly across the world, if your contribution is missing, you are with us in spirit. Last week I received an email from the child of a past pupil, and she said, I found my mother's submission when I was spring cleaning. People spring clean at this time, they don't do it. They leave the 11 months and they wait for the last month to do spring cleaning. He said, I found my mother's submission, can I still submit it for the book? And I said, the book has been printed already. So anybody whose submission was made but is missing, you are with us in spirit. Soon thereafterwards, the health challenges of Mrs. Firmstone and Bernard were pressing. And Bernard was assisting her at that time. And it became too much for the two of them to continue with the work. And in about 2016, the work was reluctantly shelved. They said, the body can't continue with this, and they shelved it. In June of 2017, I visited Mrs. Firmstone at her retirement home on completing the ultimate challenge, the Comrades Marathon, which I did religiously year after year. When I finished and I was able to get back on my legs, I went to visit Mrs. Firmstone before we went back to Cape Town. I went to check on what is the progress of the book. Much to my disappointment, Mrs. Firmstone explained that the task has been abandoned, and she pleaded with me to come to their rescue. I explained to Mrs. Firmstone that the most I'd written was a master's thesis. It's hardly a book. And I suggested to Mrs. Firmstone, I remember quite clearly, I suggested that let's do an e-book. I quickly realized that this concept was foreign, and I had to withdraw. Mrs. Firmstone says, I want to see a book in my hand. I said, you still see it in your hand, but it'll be on the screen. She said, I want a book in my hand, so I withdrew and said, no, let's leave it. I also asked Mrs. Firmstone at that point in time, how is the project going to be funded? Because it needs money. Mrs. Firmstone says, no, we just produce the book. We just print the book. And I said, Mrs. Firmstone, it doesn't quite work that way. She said one thing to me. She said, and I quote, funding will follow the project. Have faith. My wife coaxed me to take up the challenge and bring this project to fruition. The rest is history. After 18 months, here is the book. It's been published. And it's available for your perusal. The brief from the lady herself was that we must include every contribution verbatim, just as they wrote it, with no alterations. However, when I started reading through it, I said, hi, some of these pupils were not taught English by Mrs. Firmstone. They were possibly taught English by some of the nuns who were German speakers. Some were teachers, but I said, no, I could never put my name behind an article in a book like this. And I phoned Ms. Firmstone, Ms. Firmstone, we have to make some amendments to the stories. And she said, no, please leave it as the boys and girls wrote. And I said, no, Mrs. Firmstone, we can't relent on this one. If we had to include everything that was written, the book could have been twice the number of pages. This one is, I think, 466. It could go up to 800, and then nobody would buy the book. However, I made the commitment to Mrs. Firmstone because I knew she might not understand what I was saying. I said, for all the stories, we will keep the voice of the story and only do light editing. And she said, Winston, proceed, because I knew that she didn't understand what it was. However, I must say as well, many a pupil lost faith that this book would ever be published. However, let me thank those who encouraged us along the road. To everybody who submitted their story, much appreciation. For those who contributed, and even by virtue of information, perspectives, and critical input, you gave freely without hesitation. Some of the critique is like all good medicine. It stings in places. However, I'm coming to a close. The story of Little Flower School, the teachers, the support staff, and the pupils is so interwoven. For those of us who spent time at Little Flower School, it wasn't merely passing time, it was a journey. And whether the experiences were happy or not so happy, the stories and the experiences are recorded vividly in the various articles. However, at the crux of the legacy of the book is the perspective of Mrs. Firmstone, who has so much institutional memory. Let me deviate for a second. When my father decided that he's going to leave Maritzburg and he's going to go to Cape Town, his reason was that he was going to go and write his book. However, up to his death, I don't think he started with the first paragraph. However, this legacy that has been left behind is captured, and we are very glad that it's captured in this format. As Mrs. Firmstone would like it, I would have preferred the e-book, and today she can see it in her lifetime and hold the book in her hands. When Bernard and Avril and Dorothy went to show her the 5th draft, because we had to always consult with the good little lady to show her the 5th draft and say, are you happy with this? She said, yes, I'm happy with this. And then she told Avril, she said, Avril, this copy, and I told Bernard, please leave that draft with her, because I've got it, I've got an electronic copy. Then Mrs. Ferguson said, Avril, just put the book under my pillow because I want to sleep on it. But that is what Avril did. So today she can actually read the book now. We are grateful to God, our guide and our inspiration for this book. We are grateful for the priests for doing his work, to the nuns who left their homes to set up a foundation for us. We are grateful to our teachers who had that much missed ingredient in present standards of teaching. The standard of teaching is a vocation and a love for sharing knowledge. We are grateful to the hands that stirred the pots that kept us fed, that put sweat to brick and cement to build what we have and experience, to build the classrooms, the hostels, the sports fields, and our LFS. This legacy document also is the selfless work of the Catholic nuns and priests who achieved so much with so little. It also reflects the personal anecdotes of the various learners and how they developed to be self-sufficient and to be disciplined to reach their dreams and to pay it forward. Little Flower School was not as rosy for every one of us, and some of the pupils alluded to this in their stories. However, I must confess that when those writers went a little bit overboard, we had to edit that information out, because we said we want to leave a legacy. The other side is a story for the next book. There were experiences, and I'm sure some of you will be able to relate to it or have heard about. There were experiences of what we call terribleness of being at Little Flower School. However, despite that, we can say, and even those who had the terribleness experiences, they walked out of those gates with pride, knowing that they've developed into a person, into a citizen, and into a critical citizen for the country. Several pupils lament at the condition of the school today. And I must say, and this is my personal view, I will consult the editors about it, it's an indictment on the state. To think that after 94, one size will fit all. The state neglected to take stock of what is working and retain that which was working well in education. Professor Jansen, who wrote the foreword of the book, lamented about this point, and he wrote an article in a newspaper a few years ago when he said one of the mistakes of the state, our government, was the demise of the faith-based schools. In closing, what relevance does this book have? Of course, we are glad that Mrs. Firmstone has completed the project. However, when reading this book, I can assure you that it has relevance for South Africa. Firstly, although Little Flower was designated for pupils who were classified coloured, as Mrs. Ferguson said, LFS never turned a child away, regardless of where they come from and regardless of their creed or of their colour. And Ms. Ferguson can tell you stories, because as we engage with her, she'll tell you the story of how they played with this population development, the act, and how they had to play games in terms of the register, of putting people, because when the story she told us, that when the inspectors came there, who were white inspectors mostly, then they went through the register because they had a finger on Little Flower School, because they suspected that the school was taking children in who were of Indian descent, white and African. And the inspector would go through the register and say, but who is this child? This child must be removed from school. And this is the grand old lady together with Mrs. Nuncia, who fought for the right of those children. Secondly, the overarching ethic of the school and of the book was that poverty and deprivation will not be barriers to education. Thirdly, I can say, and I'm sure you can all attest to this, we were taught how to learn. We were taught how to read. We were taught how to do and step out with confidence and humility. There's a university that opened in South Africa. I don't know if it's still operating in Johannesburg. I think it's Monash, where the students of that university do the cleaning and do all the maintenance to the school, to the university. They have no cleaners running around. And the whole ethos of the university was that you must take pride. And when I read about that university, I thought of LFS. That the boys and girls, through their sweat, kept that school in shape and built it out. The next point is, a teacher must be respected and cherished by all. I'm sure you can attest to the horror stories that we see playing out in our schools. Something is wrong with our society. The next one is, this book is a document of a success story where pupils took ownership, despite them not knowing it, for their education. And lastly, hopefully that the book will seek to inspire high school learners today to still choose a career in teaching, because without them, we have no future. Thank you very much.
Ms. Ferguson, do you want to say something? You may. Let Ms. Ferguson say whatever she needs to say.
I wish to tell you all, there is no career as wonderful as teaching. You can come nearest to the children, even to the best boy in the classroom. If you're a pretty teacher, it looks as if you like it more. But teaching has so many facets that you can reach the boys and still reach them. Look at me, looking for Ray Napier today. What made me look for him? Because he was a long, tall, strong boy in school. He could do anything for. I advise you ladies who have not yet taken on teaching, even if you do it privately. You can help the children at home privately. You can do so much for them, and it is strange. You take four children in a room and help them with math, with English especially. It is so surprising, ladies and gentlemen, that today you still find children struggling with parts of speech. What is parts of speech, they will ask you. What is that? What is a noun? What is a verb? It is so surprising. And these are the things that make children fail they don't know the basics. And you can help them by just a simple word. A verb is a doing word, you can do it. Now hop, verb. Hop. And so it would be. You could do so much for the children in your home by just telling them the simple things, the easy things. Nobody would ever think of that such a thing could help them. If you were, thank you, if you were to help them it would be wonderful. Children would learn quicker. Children would learn easier if they knew the learning is at home and in the classroom. Actually, I think that today there's far more teaching done at home than in the teaching.
Right. I was listening so intently at what Ms. Worms was going to say and interrupted by Winston. I was learning how to teach children about the process. We're going to call upon Reverend Napier now, who's going to say a few words and also just pass a general vote of thanks. The floor is yours, sir.
Please don't expect a sermon. First of all, I would like to convey the greetings of the Cardinal. He's very sorry that he couldn't be here this afternoon, but he says that he has us in his prayers. Mrs. Ferguson, he is praying for you, and I would like to also thank everyone who is here this afternoon. I know that I didn't recognize many of you because when I saw you, you were little girls with pigtails, and I was sitting next to Dorothy there, and she had to remind me who she was by giving me her brother's nickname, Bulldog. And there were so many other nicknames that we had at Little Flower School. Marlon, your father was called Chimpanzee. It was supposed to be chimpanzee, but we called him Chimpanzee. We didn't know that he was. There were others that Peter gave us his name here. I didn't have a nickname. Oh yes, I did. They called me Crushes. Because of the boots that I used to wear, the big boots, used to crush everything under them. So Justice Hornsby called me Crushes. I did teach many of you at school. I can look at Charmaine, Neville, this, that. Oh, there are a lot of them here. Some that I don't even recognize. Frost at the back there. Dorothy, I don't know if I taught you. Winston, I taught. So, to see a book that reflects the life of the Little Flower School, starting at La Trappe and then going to what it is today, but it seems to have reached its demise when Mrs. Firmston left it. Mrs. Firmston, you and Sister Nuncia were the foundation members of that school, and it is only fitting to say thank you very much to Sister Nuncia and
Mrs. Ferguson, if you only knew how much Sister Nucia put into that school. I met her a couple of years after she had left, and she said to me, Ray, do you realize that when you were teaching at Little Flower School, I, as a principal, was not earning half of what you earned? She was the worst paid teacher at the school. That's because the government would not recognize her as a principal. Mr. Renton was the one that eventually got Sister Nuncia to be recognized as a principal of a school and paid properly by the department as a principal. So they put their lives into this for nothing. Unlike our political leaders today, who want to be paid millions for doing nothing. Mrs. Ferguson and Sister Nuncia put their lives into something for nothing. Thank you, Mrs. Ferguson. And as a deacon, I would like to give a blessing to all of you. I would ask you to stand, please, for a blessing. Mrs. Ferguson, you stand. Please sit down, Mrs. Ferguson.
No, I learned to stand too.
We'll make it short. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in the peace of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Now a surprise to Mrs. Ferguson. Everybody will be able to hear it. I think. What you could do is just pan around, but just pick up the sound.
Okay.
Do you want the lights off?
No, it's just sound.
Thank you. Over the world, thank you is said millions of times a day. I ask myself whether it is possible to convey the depth of my heartfelt gratitude for this unique accomplishment in these two little words. In this thank you are admiration for all who endeavored on this adventure and joy that we made it together. Everybody involved has made the book possible. But we would not be holding it in our hands had Margaret Heslop and Roanne Fetter, by a very generous donation, enabled us to employ an editor, Llewellyn Jangles, who, to our fortune, took on the job. Many thanks to you all. Before the editor could get to work, he had to be found and convinced that he was about to handle something special. Winston Middleton, you searched for and found Llewellyn. You were the one who took over the organization of getting things together, when my mother and I thought that, due to illnesses in the team working on the book, all efforts had been in vain. Your enormous energy, your dedication and loyalty are par excellence. Wonderful work done. How do I thank you? We are honored and grateful that you, Professor Jansen, agreed to do the foreword. In the sphere of education, we could not have won a better figure of vision, stalwartness, and brilliance. Many, many thanks. The book had to be printed, and Peter Finn stepped in with his generous donation. Thank you very much. Also to the Fingerprint Cooperative of Cape Town. My gratitude also goes back to those in the past. The founders, the builders, the teachers and principals of Little Flower School. They enabled the education without which we would not be here today celebrating. To all the submitters of intriguing, fascinating and authentic accounts of life at LFS, thank you very, very much. Without your stories, there would be no book, printed or not. Your belief in this venture was a constant source of energy. Carol Smith, your calm and efficient help after manuscripts had been stolen. Your typing the huge batch given to you prevented some nervous breakdowns. Thank you very, very much. There are those in Germany I would like to thank as well. You supported me through your interest and morally because you believe in education, in working to make society better. Ulrike Frey, Heinz-Jürgen Küpper, Gudrun Bedenk-Viva, Ingrid Hacker-Seehaus, Father Adalbert Walling. Thank you very much. Dear co-authors, Bernard Matthey and Edmund de Brois, a big thank you. You were involved in the many, many hours of brainstorming, in the overcoming of doubt, in deciding to go on, in the moments of elation. Together we made it. And now to you, my mother, it is no exaggeration to say that actually without you, there would not even have been an idea of this book, let alone the complete book. You are the key point, the heart and soul, the mind behind most matters concerning Little Flower School. In your case, saying a simple thank you seems so little, but it is an all-encompassing thank you. Thank you. Eileen Küpper-Fernstone, Germany, November 2018.
Is there anything you want to say, Mrs. Is there anything you wish to say, Mrs. Firmstone?
And
Is there anything you wish to say again?
well, I want to say something very strange happened to this book. Avril and Dorothy and Winston sent me one to look at, and I looked at it, but very many things have happened to me. I am 92 years old, and at 92 I don't see very well. So I hadn't much time to look at it, and I put it under my pillow, just a bit under my pillow. And I fell asleep. And the first thing when I opened my eyes, I looked at it, it was gone. Oh Lord, how could this happen to me? I quickly called the nurse, the sister, and I told her. And she said, I saw it there. And they started hunting for the book. Very soon they found it in a nurse's handbag. And so they asked, what did you do this for? So she said, I wasn't going to seal it. I was taking it home. I was going to read it throughout the night. It's fascinating. I was only going to read it. I was not sealing it. And of course, nobody would really believe that, but they allowed her to get away with it. Nothing happened to her. And she said, actually we were two. Two of us agreed to read it and bring it back. And there are such fascinating stories. I don't know if any of you remember Herbert Africa.
Yes.
Now Herbert Africa himself wrote something in there. And he said the thing that he remembers most is Mr. Firmstone giving him punishment for something he had done. So he accepted the punishment, and he said, oh, it's finished in no time. He dug it up, dug it up. I don't know if you know kikuyu grass.
Yeah.
All right, dug up the kikuyu grass, and it was soon very, very eagerly, the patch here, such a small patch. And then he was sitting under the tree. And Mr. Ferguson came along and he said, "Please, sir, I have completed." Really, Mr. Ferguson took the fork and picked up a root of kikuyu grass and said, this is not. And he said he looked, "I have dug up there." So Mr. Ferguson said, "You have not completely dug everything away." And he didn't know what to say or what to do. And Africa said, "But I have." "No," said Mr. Ferguson. "Bring the fork and lifted the root high up. You have not completed." And so Herbert Africa's story is in there of how he had failed to dig up the kikuyu root. Well, some of the boys tell fascinating stories of what they did and what they did not. And the girls equally fascinating stories of what they did and what they did not. But I can tell you that everybody who recounts the stories of what they partook in, of what they did at school, nobody ever says it did them bad. No, everybody tells a story, and tells a story that you can see that it contributed to the development. I won't always say the well-being, because very often when they were discovered for having done something wrong, they had to be punished. So anyway, it developed very much towards the development of the contribution of their self-development. And if this book is, everybody wants a copy. It has a few photographs.
Lots of photographs.
Eh?
Many photographs.
Oh, it has many photographs.
I mentioned it now.
Yes. Thank you.
Could I ask Pieter and Maggie Heslop to come forward?
Peter, oh, such a great man. Thank you. And now your names will be forever in the book. They would have died, but they're not going to die now. Now people have put their names in stones.
Okay. We're now going to hand over complimentary copies of the book to a few people who assisted on this journey. This is Pieter, this is Maggie Heslop. I'm going to ask them to say a few words should they so wish. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Maggie to hand over a complimentary copy to Little Flower School. Mr. Fasasi, the principal, is not here, so we'll just do it for sake of the video, that she will hand over a complimentary copy to school. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Napier if he could receive it on behalf of the school, and then Mr. Fasasi will pick it up in Maritzburg. If you could receive the book on behalf of Little Flower School, please. So the first copy is for the school. Then we will also want to hand a copy over to the Woodlands Library. I'm going to ask the librarian, I'm going to ask Peter to hand it over to the librarian of Woodlands Library. Thank you.
Now to place your name will be in stone.
I'm going to ask Mrs. Firmstone now to hand over complimentary copies to two of our sponsors, but Margie will say a little something about it. Mrs. Firmstone, this is the book for Margie and Rowan.
Margie and Rowan.
Yeah, Rowan Fitter.
Yes.
Yes. So you can hand that over to Margie.
Margie. Listen, who was Margie before she was?
So Mrs. Firmstone never calls anybody by a short name. My name is Margaret.
Margie. Who was
Rowan.
Yeah, Rowan.
She was a Hislop also.
She was a Hislop.
Yeah.
Which family?
Hubert's daughter.
Oh, Hubert's daughter.
Yeah.
I did say Hubert's daughter.
So please receive those on behalf of the editors.
Thank you. So this pressure cooker here on the side of me just told me I had to say a few words. I don't know how few they're going to be. Mrs. Firmstone knows me as a strong person, so this gets a bit emotional. You know, the Bible says the power of words and what you speak over your life. And Mrs. Firmstone, for the longest time, though I never matriculated, I had a standard 8. She never ever treated me any different. She always encouraged me. The first testimonial I got from her spoke of who I am, how bright I am, and everything else. And fast forward to 2008, and I'm a finalist in the Businesswoman of the Year. Wow. And the judges read her testimonial letter. And throughout this, I've carried every word she said about me, and I started to believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm a director of 3 companies.
Wow.
And I just felt this, for me, was my giving back to her. So when we first started about 5 years ago, when she told me the amount and told me she couldn't do the book, and I thought, this is doable, I can do it, and this is my plowback. You've heard Winston say all these things have happened. By the time we got to this stage, it's now sort of more than double where we started. I then called in Roanne, and we decided to fund this project. And for me, I honor you, and it was an honor to do this for you. I wanted to see this project finished. I continue in your honor to educate kids like we do in Mpumalanga in all the areas that our trucks run. Sure, there's a lot to say, but we're going to leave it here. And I really, really am grateful for who you are in my life and who you've been over the years, and love you.
And loved you even so.
Before Margaret goes, I must say Margaret now, not Margie. She's too humble. Allow me to announce the contribution of Margaret and Rowan. They contributed the 50,000 towards the editorial and the guest house.
This man over the couple of months, and we met for the first time today. And the first time he phoned me, he told me Mrs. Firmstone told him that I was a bit of a tough girl.
Let me just add to the finishing paragraph of that story. No, but, no, let's do this one. Mrs. Firmstone?
Yes?
Please hand over the complimentary copy to Peter Finn.
And aren't you going to read?
No, we're still going to come to that. This is the complimentary copy to Peter Finn, and he will say a few things. I leave it.
Thank you, Peter. Peter sounds better. It's always a good name. Thank you, Peter. To see your name forever in stone. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, just my inspiration I got from Mrs. Firmstone a couple of years ago. I wasn't a Little Flower student. My wife Shirley, she was a Bantu before, and she went to Little Flower, I went to Harding, but I'm connected to Little Flower through Mrs. Hughes. Auntie Dees was a Finn before she became a Hughes, and that's how I'm connected. That's my auntie. And Mrs. Firmstone used to always say we must try and contribute to the upliftment of colored people. And that has always stayed in my heart, that I needed to do something to contribute to that. And thank you very much for the advice.
We just add the closing contributions. I can look after other people's money meticulously, but not my own. Number two is, I cannot raise money. I don't go to people and ask them for money. Maybe it's just a flower thing or something came in. I just can't do it. When it came to the money story, I asked Ms. Firmstone, we need money to get going. She said, no, she's going to phone people. So she phoned around, and then she phoned me back and says, please phone Margaret Hessler and talk to her. I said, but Ms. Firmstone, have you phoned her? She said, no. I said, no, you please phone her first. I don't know Ms. Margaret Hessler from above, so you please phone her and tell her I'm going to phone her after you phone. So she did that. So Ms. Firmstone phoned back and said, I phoned Margaret Hessler and she wants more information. So I phoned her and explained the whole story to her. After a long explanation and that, and I could see the businesswoman coming out of her. I can't work for the private sector. I'm in education. And we were given the right act of, step 1, step 2, step 3, the book must be finished. And so that is how we came. And with Peter, same thing happened. Ms. Firmstone says, phone Peter Finn. I said, Ms. Firmstone, have you phoned him? So she had to phone him and explain what the call would be about. And then I phoned him. Peter said, no, just send an email with what you want. And I can tell you, without that seed funding, this would not be possible. So thank you very much.
Right, at this point, we've just got another ex-pupil that has just walked in here. Lenny Bowers from Durban. And Lenny was gifted with the voice, and I instructed him now, because that's my job, to instruct, that he's not going to leave this function without singing a song to Mrs. Rose. And he's going to. You see, he has everybody's laptop, he has everybody's microphone. I said, just go and sing, you got a voice.
Hello, Leonard.
Leonard, yes. What a memory. Yes,
Harriet's son.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just give a brief synopsis of my engagement with this amazing lady. I started at Little Flower in 1974, standard 6, and I matriculated in 78. And I always, as a school principal, I always tell people I went to one of the best schools in the country. I think that deserves a round of applause. And they always ask me what made Little Flower School the best school in the country. I said, apart from the amenities and the facilities that were availed to us, it's also the quality of educators or teachers that we had, which pursued academic excellence. And I'll never forget Mrs. Firmson was my vocational guidance teacher in matric, and her famous words were, whatever qualifications you have, whether you're lying in the gutters one day, nobody can take that piece of paper away from you. So I thank you for that inspiration, Mrs. Firmston, and I thank you for the encouragement. I did my diploma at Bechet with Dorothy Middleton and company, and I went on to University of Westville, did an undergrad, and I went to do my honors at Howard College, and then I went on to another university to continue my other postgraduate degree, and it's all by virtue of Mrs. Firmson's encouragement, and that totally vindicates the dictum that if you continue pursuing your academic career, the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. And I'm quite surprised you remembered me. As I walked in, you said, Harriet's child. Mrs. Firmson taught my mother, who's now late. So Mrs. Firmson, without any further ado, as Dorothy says, I've been gifted by the grace of God with the voice, and I'm saying so with humility. I'm going to do about 2 verses for you, because you are an incredible lady.
Thank you.
And something from Frank Sinatra, and dealing, which also deals with the launch of this lovely book, which is Casting Stone. And Casting Stone. And also I see one of my standard 4 teachers, I know as Miss Bauer, she's Mrs. Napier. And like I said, Mrs. Firmson, I'm a school principal today for the past 18 years, and it's all that I learned from Little Flower School, the best school in the country. Mrs. Firmson, as you know, that you did things your way, so I'm going to just give a quick rendition of it. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I say it clear, I state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full, I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, she did it her way. Thank you, Mrs. Firmson. We love you.
finish with the other vote of thanks. I forgot to hand over small tokens to those that we had offered the complimentary books to. Can I call Avril? Oh, can I call Avril and Dorothy to the front, please? The lady in red. On behalf of the editors, I also want to recognize Avril and Dorothy's work for putting this launch together. This is a small token of our appreciation. Ma'am?
I don't take credit. I did nothing. I just instructed Avril. She did all the work.
You see, you can't, the teacher, the principal thing, you can't loosen this. It's a terrible. Thank you very much, Mrs. Fenner, for putting this together in a light-hearted way that you did. Also, allow me to thank my colleagues back home, back at UWC, who supported me in this venture. I can tell you all those stories. I've read those stories about 7 times now. Bernard must have read it about 10 times. When somebody walked in, Mr. Easter, they said, Mr. Easter, I said, oh, the electrician. He said, yes. So thank you to my colleagues for helping me to review the book, pointing out the errors, pointing out the ways of making changes to it. I also want to thank the sponsors, Avril, the sponsors who assisted with the refreshments, and for Avril to do it. Do you want to mention them, please?
No, she's going to mention it.
Oh, she's going to mention it, fine. Okay. And to all of you, maybe she's going to mention it too, but we can repeat it, for taking this time out to be with us. Just 1 or 2 announcements. Well, depending on the program director, it's her prerogative. When we finish, the books can be purchased. The 225 rands a year. For those who have prepaid the books, we've got your book orders there. I also want to just advertise this for those who went to UWC in the 70s. Somebody has just published a book of life in the hostels, because that's what they used to call it at UWC, and then the hostels, and you can't take that away from now. They call it accommodation and student accommodation. These 70s and 80s call it we stayed in the hostels. The book has just been published about UWC, and it's also stories of students who stayed in the hostels in those years. So anybody wants to buy a copy of this book, you can tell me, and I'll give you the publisher's name, or we can arrange that as well. Yeah, I think that's all for now, madam. Ma'am? I'm done.
Oh, you're done now? Okay.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I know you have been a very attentive audience. Thank you for your patience. No function is complete without singing out, our gratitude to our sponsors. First and foremost, Mrs. Firmstone, our esteemed author, a role model. Thank you for inspiring us today to become more motivated and to strive higher. Shoot for the stars, I think, would be apt. And you have just proved to us anything and everything is achievable as long as we have the right objectives. With the launch of this book, our national history will take a step forward, and each one of you today have become witnesses to the birth of a new body of knowledge. Thank you for that. A big vote of thanks is going out to the sponsor of our meal today, Mr. Leslie Bacchus, the sponsor of our cake, Doreen McDonald, the fruit basket from Roy's Wholesalers, Woodland staff for setting up the place and all the table settings, and the team that has put it together. You all are amazing. Thank you for staying after work hours. Hayton Secondary, thank you so much for loaning of all the cutlery, etc. The organizing team, well done to you all. It's been amazing.
Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm going to the front in church now. Anyway, was that preach? I'm still here tomorrow morning. And I'd like people at this point just to chat to each other, because we are now going to bring out the meal. Very simple meal. It is just made so that we can have communion while we're here. Please, I want to see you. Bernard Matthew, can you please kind of step forward? Mrs. Thompson would like to see you in her office. So I'll bring the food out, and then just before we eat, we'll ask Dorothy to say the grace.
Right, let us just bow our heads and thank God for the for what we are about to receive. May the Lord make us truly grateful for Christ's sake. Amen.
Well, you're going to come take photos, you can take your photos, but there's a real team next to the photos.
And please do sign the register, just to have it on record or something.
Of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it? You say? Yeah, absolutely. Lovely seeing you. Nice to see you. So enjoyed the queue.
And then this one? Right? No, you did? Yes. Thank you. And then this one is for Terence Baker. Remember Terence Baker? Yeah, he asked me to buy one for you. Terence and Olivia. Terence Baker. He's coming down to Durban from Joburg. Terence. They Durban now. Yeah, his brother-in-law's 50th birthday. I'm going back for that now. Thomas. Anthony Thomas.
keep us somewhere. Just had a come and fetch you now? I'm waiting. Okay. These are mine, yeah. In case, yeah. I'm just going to get some, take them somewhere.
Seriously? Mrs. Webster, can I ask you to sign this for me?
It's too advanced.
One button, so you put an A in front.
Come on. Otherwise it's going to be the whole day. No, this is arrangement in place. I saw you the last time, but Mr. Keith Walker from Australia. Yes. Yes. Please take a photo of me and Mrs. Francis. How do I take it? This place is speaking right. Smile to louder. Thomas Francis. Let's look at the camera. My wife wants to what is this? Another one. Food. You have one on one side. But this is the thank you. Yes. To Lena.
voice clip and
Wonderful, man. Wonderful. Oh, she's going to sign those.
Now please give me Irene's number. I had it on WhatsApp because we were corresponding, and then all of a sudden I see my WhatsApp gone. Oh wait, now it's going. Is that the sound?
that's the number
173. Okay, thanks. Just anyway. No, just sign. It just doesn't matter.
What
She's pointing this side.
Wait, no.
Oh. Don't touch. Check the Okay. How's that? How you doing? Oh, you did this one. Oh my word, you've done it all. Look at you. Yes, you did. These are going What?
Then your job is
No, just your job. Yes.
The job is done, I must make it up. Yeah. I've never heard of the getting good in your own
That's fine, never should say, I can do this So I want to do the Henry's and Ursula's one. Henry and Ursula. Thank you so much for all the hard work.
Oh, man, Margie, goodness gracious me. I'm sorry that I didn't make you out. But anyway, we've
What happens when you 50 plus and you
I'm at 50 plus.
You can do my one too while you want. Take your photo of the two of them.
Are you sure? Oh, the mature champagne.
There's a
Oh, there we go. I turned it to selfie now. I don't have to turn it back.
you know that functions.
Oh, this is your phone.
Just take
That's why I say you have to oh, you better go get Gility. What's your name? Yeah, this grave is neat. Mr. Peterson also wrote. Who wrote this? Mr. Peterson. Who wrote this book? Yes. I don't remember Bob. I don't know Bob. Otherwise, I could show you to show craft. Yeah, it's a church. I've seen it.
No, but I think the second machine is making a noise as well. I don't think it's raining that worried. Then I realized, no, there's a noise.
Yes.
So Stone book arranged for, say, everyone.
Yeah, but the car she's moving to plane. So I'm just she shouts at me.
And be late to them.
But the children does this more day. Still don't know where it's I used to play that it's more easier. Remember, I've said also that word Mrs. Ferguson, I'm going to love and leave you. I know you need to. I need to get back to Durban. All the best. Thanks for everything. Remember my mom that told the story and about it. And that's my older sister. She's got Alzheimer's. She's got Alzheimer's and